It carries within the word, within the letter, when you read it, when you engage with it, special spirit that actually heals you, lifts you up, that soothes you. Don't you notice when you really open yourself to the Quran, you feel better without even understanding? Just when you engage with the word and recite it or hear it, unless somebody is really having some doubts about it, there's not a time except that you'll say, I feel better. Allah says you cannot survive without this. It's going to open your eyes and your heart. It's going to heal the mind, the doubts, the uncertainties. It'll really shed light on your mind, but also on your broken heart, on your confused heart, on your grieving heart, on your heart that is full of doubts and fears and anxieties. It's going to take that away. And it's a bushra. It's a glad time. Just by me engaging with this book, the question is, how do I establish a relationship with this? Do you remember the formula we shared last time? You got to engage the book of Allah. The more you come to it, the more it comes to you. It responds to you based on your condition. You respect it, it respects you. You open it, it opens you. It opens itself to you. That's the book of Allah. Different than any other book, but it requires a commitment to it. Engaging with the book of Allah, not mistreating it, not just with, there are levels of engaging Allah's book, recitation of it. If you're not then hearing it until you learn to recite it, without even understanding. But Allah demanded that we try to understand it. Because understanding is not now about just the spirit touching you. It's going to show you. It's going to lift you up. It's going to provide this light for you to see your path, to heal, to grow, and to become better. Each and every one of us here has potential, brothers and sisters. Amazing potential from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is no way you can reach it anywhere near without Allah's book. No way. And we're going to harm ourselves in the process, and we're going to be blinded. And in the next world, if the book of Allah wasn't in our lives, there is no place in Jannah or with Allah. It's Allah's promise. Because we're going to be blind people, and we're going to be resurrected blind. That's Allah's gift. And He tells Rasulullah, it's my gift to you and to earth. Each of us desperately needs it. So this class, inshallah, will be, inshallah, a tool for you to try to now engage with the Quran differently. Many of us struggle with understanding the messaging of the Quran because there are different levels of engaging with the Quran. On a scholarly level, there are special tools that somebody needs to acquire to gain a technical understanding of the verses, technical, the tafsir of the Quran. And it's a whole science. But majority of people don't have that. So what does that mean? I'm cut off? No. Each verse has a message for you. Messages. Again, the Quran engages you. How do I get to that? So inshallah, each time we're going to come, we're going to take a few verses from Surah Yusuf and attempt that, inshallah. Give you appreciation of the language, of the letters, of the message of Allah to you and me, of what we can derive from each letter, each verse. And through that, you're going to gain, inshallah, the tools that you need. Number one, to connect with Allah Himself. Number two, to connect with His Word, because it's essential. Number three, to elevate your faith. The Quran, it turns out, increases your faith. And we feel it right here in the heart. It's a knowing. It's a feeling. It's a witnessing right here. And it demands a relationship with the Quran. But also now we're going to gain answers to many of our questions. And we'll talk, inshallah, in the remainder of the time about why Surah Yusuf. So again, you can say easily, I know the surah, right? Just as the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it's an infinite ocean. It astonishes you. And the more that you engage with the words of Allah over and over and over, the more answers it gives you. It's an open book and an open ocean that is so deep, you cannot reach the depth of it. With each letter, imagine. So inshallah, when we come back, regardless of what you've learned before, it's going to open new doors for you, new windows of understanding, of insights, of wisdoms. And this surah is unique. It's not my words, it's the words of Allah Himself. What is special about Surah Yusuf? Inshallah, we'll give a quick intro. And inshallah, if we have the time, we'll begin maybe with a verse. And inshallah, we'll resume every week with a set of verses until the very end. Surah Yusuf is one of the most beloved to people. No matter what, the story of this special prophet of Allah, who is actually recognized for being the most beautiful of Allah's creation. It has a unique story of struggle. It's an epic. And it appeals to all of our hearts, no matter how many times you've heard it. Every time you hear it again, makes you what? Smile. Little wonder, right? It's an amazing story. And it's especially been remarked as one of the most unique for another reason. There are many, many wonders about this surah. But it's the only surah in the Quran, Surah Yusuf. There's a surah dedicated to this Prophet of Allah. And the entire surah is his story. So the only place in the Quran where you find one story completely contained in one surah, and the surah is the story from beginning to what? End. All the other prophets of Allah in the Quran, they're mentioned in segments, different places. You got to almost reassemble the story. Make sense? And you're not going to find that level of detail. So you'll find snippets of their lives here and there. Musa, for example, is the most mentioned prophet in the Quran. A lot has been mentioned, but it's not chronological. You have to reconstruct the narrative. Surah Yusuf is unique in that it's dedicated entirely to that one amazing story from beginning to end chronologically and in a detailed, comprehensive way. In a detailed, comprehensive way. And it's a surah that really soothes. So much so that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, a companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said that Surah Yusuf is one of the wonders of it is that it soothes every grieving person. Guaranteed. It has that power from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That if you're grieving and you come with that intention of being soothed, of being elevated and strengthened, Surah Yusuf will deliver to you. One of the many secrets of this surah. Right? It's very comprehensive and relevant to all of us, and that's one of the reasons also we study it. And we need to study it. I have continued to be mesmerized. I'm blown away by how it addresses every, pay attention to this, critical aspect of our lives. It is so relevant to every age group and to every category or area that touches upon our lives. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually in our journey. Every single problem that you can imagine somehow is illustrated in this story. Somehow is illustrated in that story. I'll give you examples. This story will address, inshallah, we're going to cover all these topics and dig deep into it because Islam is real. Islam is not fiction. Islam came to recognize our humanity. Allah made us human, who are meant to go through struggle and go through cuts and bruises in life. Welcome to being human. Allah wants you to recognize that, embrace it. But He gives you the healing for all of these things. This is what trips people up, brothers and sisters. This is what can take somebody to kill themselves. They have no resolution or healing for their aches and bruises. It can drive them crazy. Allah says the Quran is a healer for you. And this story in particular is going to now not just heal you on a spiritual level. It's going to equip you with tools and answers. It's going to make you relate to somebody who's on a higher level than all of us, who's gone through similar struggles and adversities. And who amongst us is not going through adversities and struggles that are not resolved? Right? And you know very well, if it goes for a long time and it's still persisting, it can really sink you deeper. Surah Yusuf will address things like, from the beginning, first being on the receiving end of your siblings' hate. How many of us have struggles with their siblings, right? Jealousy. But go beyond. Jealousy is a real thing. Here, can be happening right here. Jealousy and envy. Oh yeah. And amongst people who pray. And amongst people who hold the Quran or have memorized the Quran. Yeah, these are real illnesses. Surah is going to dig into it. What happens with jealousy? What can it do for you, to you? How do you deal with it if it is a problem that you're dealing with and you notice it on your friends or family members, on your siblings? But now it goes into harm. The siblings of this prophet harmed him to the extent of wanting to kill him. And now he struggles being alone imagine these trials that he's going through, alone as a child, thrown away to just fight for his own life, away from dad and mom and family, alone. And how many of us are alone? Feel alone despite the company around us. We feel alienated from others. We have the struggle and the pain inside of us, and nobody can understand it. You feel alone. And some people are physically alone, and some people are spiritually alone, emotional alone. It's one of the toughest struggles of our day and age, loneliness. Loneliness, brothers and sisters. And it's not about the numbers of people around you. There's no connection. Yusuf was in that. How did he survive that? And it's very ironic. And the trials are illogical. They didn't make sense. How many of us are going through trials that don't make sense? And we're struggling to make sense of them. And it can affect your faith. I always say that faith, you're going to see it in this story. Faith is gained or lost at the doors of your adversity. Make sense? Your hardships is where you're either going to increase in faith or sink. At the doors of what's called qadar. What qadar? What qadar? Right? Divine decrees is the way, or as some say, predestination. Divine decree. And it's categories. We're going to dig into the types of qadar. Not just one qadar, by the way. Otherwise, it can be a cop-out. And Allah essentially defined everything. No, it's not like that. So there are layers of qadar. But at the doors of qadar, we either grow and heal, or we sink and lose ourselves. Powerful. This story will illustrate to you that things are not going to just explain themselves to you. There are puzzling, overwhelming things that are going to happen to this man, Yusuf alayhi salam, that are puzzling for not just a day or two, for decades. He's going to struggle with these trials, beginning with his family, dealing with family, siblings, parents, then being thrown out, then being sold as a slave. Can you imagine? How many of us feel belittled, feel insulted, feel like we're nothing to others, right? How many people, like your friends, rejected you from the clique? I deal with this all the time with brothers, sisters, even in our community. Yeah, they feel left out. Yusuf experienced that. How did he deal with it? Allah is, imagine, shedding light on things like that. Why? Because it's real. Allah wants you to deal and cope with your struggles. He's giving you a beautiful prophetic portrait of a man who struggled for decades with this. And we're going to look at his reactions and why he stands out as an extraordinary prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then he's going to end up in somewhere beautiful in his life. You know, when things start working out, you've been patient. Say, alhamdulillah, finally, I got the degree. I got this, I got that, right? I passed. I got the job. And you think now, mashallah, it's going to be utopia, right? They're going to get hit hard. Finally, you found a spouse. You're like, oops. Week later into it, what happened? What hit me, right? Problem after problem, this and that. You beg for a child and you have that child and worst experience of your life. So suddenly, and I see this a lot, people say, and I've been patient, suddenly it opened up and I thought everything is going to start working out. Then suddenly, I'm hit again. I'm like, yes, welcome to life. Right? That's life until the last breath. Trial after trial. It makes no sense. You're going to have to actually kind of take a macroscopic view. As they say, connecting the dots. Connecting the dots, right? But what do you need to connect the dots? You need the dots. Sometimes we want to connect them before the dots happen. Why is this happening to me? Well, you don't have the dots. Yusuf is going to have to live a whole life to see the dots and connect them. But it requires what? What's the word? Exactly. What's patience? This surah, exactly. We're going to talk about what sabr is and isn't. A lot of us struggle. Again, it's easy to say sabr is great. Sabr is amazing. You should have sabr, brother. Have sabr. And people I am still doing it. Nothing is happening here, right? And I'm still struggling. Sabr. Allah, when you see the beauty of this concept, live through the Father and the Son, and say, wow, that's sabr. That's patience. It's different than what you think. And it's not the stuff you've heard. How about grief? What's real grief? What's acceptable grief? How do you cope with grief that it doesn't drown you? It becomes a story of your life that you dwell on, that it breaks you. How do you cope with grief? How long can you live with grief? We're going to look at that. We're going to look at interrogate these concepts deeply through this story, because it's going to reveal it a human struggle, a real struggle of a father who had to cry until he lost his eyesight. A prophet of Allah. Remember, Yusuf is who? Rasulullah reminds us, when you're studying the surah, you're studying the story of Al-Karim, Ibn al-Karim, Ibn al-Karim, Ibn al-Karim. What does that mean? To show the honor of this man. He's Al-Karim, he's a Karim, typically translated as generous, but it's more than that. Karim is good, the good one, the noble one, and the generous one. Among the most noble. He's the noble, the son of who? The noble, the son of the noble, the son of the noble, the son of the noble. Who are these people? Look at his lineage, unusual lineage. Who's the father of Yusuf? Who's Yaqub? A prophet of Allah. Yaqub is the son of who? He's noble. Ishaq, his father, who's Ishaq? Prophet of Allah. Among the most noble prophets of Allah. Who is he the son of? Ibrahim. The father, right? It's amazing lineage. Imagine these are your fathers and grandfathers. Yet in the story, talk about self-worth. And among the main issues, not just young people, older people also struggle with, is their self-worth. I'm worth nothing. People look down on me. People make fun of me, etc. You know what Yusuf went through? We're going to dig into it. He was sold, as Allah said, وَشَرَوْهُ بِثَمَنٍ. They sold him as a slave. They didn't even give him good price. Like one of the cheapest sold in the market was Yusuf. Who's he? The generous or the noble one, the son of the noble one, the son of the noble one, the son of the noble. One of the best messengers of Allah was sold for nothing. And Allah will show us what happened at the end. Who's worthy and who's not. So how do you look at your own self-worth? Another key question. We're going to look at processes how to forgive. Again, another thing we don't know how to do in our lives. How do you actually forgive? What's constructive forgiveness, healthy forgiveness versus unhealthy forgiveness? We're going to see that in the story of Yusuf. We're going to see temptation. One of the biggest struggles is opposite gender. How do you deal with that? Attractions, seductions. Life is real. Life is so real. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He actually gives us not just a glimpse, detailed account in this story about a man and a woman in a room. And literally becomes so vivid when He tells us she threw herself on him and he would have almost done something with her. Even as a prophet, if it wasn't for Allah strengthening his heart. We're going to talk about that as well. How do you resist? Because, by the way, life comes down to two meanings. Really, really success and growth and healing ultimately. We have to learn, right? Allah knows we're not perfect. We just have to learn and grow. Comes down to resisting what you love. Love, I didn't mean the healthy love. The things that are like attract you. How do you resist them? And how do you endure what you don't like? Make sense? Even in life itself, those who really rise have to struggle enduring what they don't like and resisting all the opportunities to do the things that they really want to do, love to do, the attractive life, right? If you're able to resist it a lot, take the little that you need and keep enduring the discomfort, you're going to grow. We're going to see how Yusuf did this. We're going to see how da'wah is done. Oh, so we're talking about emotional aspects, relational aspects, but even da'wah, how do you actually affect people? How do you call them to Allah? How do you talk to somebody? We're going to see a beautiful illustration in the encounters of Yusuf with people, how he calls them to Allah, how he engages their minds. We're going to talk about a major trial of being in prison almost a decade. Can you imagine? False accusations and rumors. How often do we deal? Right here. I have no idea. It happens all the time. It has ruined relationships. There are years, brothers and sisters, right here in our community. It wrecked the year because of rumors and false accusations. Devastating sin, by the way. Talk about one of the worst things we can do. Slandering each other. Spreading rumors about each other. Oh, we love to do that, the shaitan. Right? Allah's going to show us the consequences of that. And also how to deal with it. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala supports those who are patient with it. Etc., etc. Issues are countless. But as you've seen, they cover your faith, how to grow it, in real life, how to manage the relationships, the emotions, right, etc., in ways that are not captured anywhere else in the Quran. As for the reasons of revelation, inshallah, quickly, we'll spend inshallah 10 more minutes on this. Reasons of revelation. There was, cited were a number of reasons why this surah was revealed. One of them is that the timing is amazing. Rasulullah went through struggle, brothers and sisters, and he didn't just see the outcome of Allah's plan right away. That's the test is what? Allah gives us a test, the qadr, but He does what? Screens you, veils you from seeing what? The purpose. Right? Qadr is not going to come and say, hey, by the way, let me explain to you why you're sick right now, why you're struggling to find a partner, a spouse, why things are just not working out. It's not going to happen like that. Wish, right? It would be nice. Qadr just talks to me all the day. Hey, Qadr, can you please explain to me why I'm feeling like that right now? It's sucky. It's horrible. Please explain to me right now. Qadr's like, yeah, absolutely. Let's have some coffee. I'll show you everything. Right? No, Qadr doesn't like, no, it's not how it works. It's not. Allah will show you one day, and it's not up to me even. I cannot talk to you. How do I engage with you? Right? One day you'll know. One day you'll understand. Wallahi. That's how it is. Right? So, in the life of Rasulullah, things were awful, traumatic. So much so that in a year called the year of Huzn, imagine how grieving he was. Talk about those who deny grief in Islam, right? Get over it. Like somebody loses themselves, like, yeah, you have 3 days. Yalla, wipe the tears. Get over it. Tell us. Enough. Sadness, bad. That's for your faith. Huh? There's a whole year called the year of grief. For those who say 3 days, or they put a number for you, like somehow got to switch out of it, like a machine, right? Doesn't happen that way. We're going to talk about Yaqub, the father of Yusuf, his grief, despite having faith. Can they coexist? Absolutely. So Rasulullah experienced tremendous trauma in that year and loss. Who did he lose in 1 year? Lost his wife, who was the main pillar of support in his life. In the midst of all the adversity, persecution, abuse from people, you know what you need? Some good friend, a partner who will lift you up. Allah's there, yeah, but Allah sends us to each other. You need somebody to lean on. Open your heart to somebody who can empathize with you, love you in the moment, encourage you, care for you, check on you. How are you? Not to say, I don't care. Let's talk about me, right? It's not a friend. He had the best friend in his wife. Make sense? She really was a pillar of support. He couldn't fathom life without her. Why? Because of her support. And I tell you, look for that in a spouse. Look for that in a spouse. There's nothing like it. Beyond all the fluff, right, of Hollywood and Bollywood, you really need a spouse that cares for you, empathizes with you, looks out for you, is your champion. Champion in this life. Ups and downs, I'm with you, and you'll feel it. That's what a partner for me is. Very simple. Khadija was the embodiment of it. That's why it's the best marriage. Amazing. They were so happy with each other. Not because life is easy, because they were in it together, struggling and sweating together, right? So imagine in the midst of the persecution, they're looking to kill him, and he loses his wife. Devastating. And then he loses the second most important pillar of support in his life. Who was that? His uncle, Abu Talib, who was still a kafir, but supported Prophet Muhammad and protected him from the attacks of Quraysh. I have no one. You know, his grief was overwhelming. It was unreal, indescribable. How will Allah soothes? Allah never left. And he put him through that trial for a purpose. It's timed perfectly by Allah. Allah knows what he's doing. He took the most important people. Imagine you and me, but we'll say, it's like, oh, Allah, I have no one now, devastated. How come this and that? How come people are living to 100 and you choose to take, hang in there. Allah took Khadija from the life of Rasulullah. He could have made her live a few more years, but no. It's the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everybody's going to go back to learn to depend on Allah. But he's still sad. How did he soothe them? One of the surahs revealed was Surah Yusuf. Because it's the life mimics the life of Rasulullah. I'm going to show you now the story of a man who went through these struggles of loneliness, of separation, of losing all the people in his life. And through that, you're going to see what Allah does with him at the end. He has a full account of a story he didn't even know about. And because it's the word of Allah, who's the author? Allah. It's not just a story you read in a book or hear. This is the speech of Allah, so naturally it heals. When he was reading the story, it was soothing him, it was comforting him. That's how Allah soothes brothers and sisters. So it's a call to you and me. If you're struggling, read Allah's word and reflect on it. That's one of the reasons why this surah was revealed. Two more reasons that are reported. One of them is that the Sahaba, the companions of Prophet Muhammad, were experiencing pressures of the abuse, of the persecution that almost made them buckle. It was so intense, brothers and sisters. Imagine a whole system, government, the tribes of Mecca going after them, their own lives, hurting them bad. Physically, mentally, emotionally, they're after them. Persecution. Imagine all the stories of persecution we're hearing. The Rohingya, the Uyghurs in China. You hear about our brothers and sisters now in India, what they're going through, right? All this stuff that you're saying, persecution is awful. We don't know how it feels like here. Only if you get a glimpse of it, to appreciate the pain and the trauma, right? When they're going after your children, when they burn your home, etc. That's what they were doing to the Sahaba. So they talked to Rasulullah and they said, the Prophet of Allah, can you tell us stories from those who came before us, who struggled, suffered? Let's see. As a healing, you just want to hear stories. What does Allah do when He heard their question to Rasulullah? He says, I'm going to reveal to you the best of stories. Surah Yusuf is going to be in the Quran until the end of time, for you to be soothed and strengthened by it. Number 3 reason is that Quraysh were out to assault Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, ruin his life, ruin his reputation. They're trying to find ways to discredit him. What's the best? How do we attack this man who's just like so credible, believable? Numbers of Muslims are increasing. We have no rebuttal to his arguments. How can you rebut the Quran, the truth? Because they're living lives of falsehood and injustice. People who cannot, I always say that, subhanAllah, it's hard to, you cannot argue truth unless we are ill-intentioned. And you start to argue with it, right? Use words to get around it. And these people just couldn't. They didn't know what to do. They called Prophet Muhammad names. They did everything to falsify his image, and it wasn't working. So they came up with a plan. They're like, okay, maybe if we can bring, learn something, because they really believe he's not a prophet. Some of them believe he's a prophet, some of them didn't. He says, oh, maybe we can challenge him with a question that only a prophet would be able to answer, and we stump him with it. He doesn't know the answer, and we embarrass him. So how did they get a question like that? They thought, he's claiming to be a prophet of God, Allah. Let's talk to the Jews. Because of their knowledge of what? The biblical tradition. See, the Jews didn't interact with the Arabs of Mecca. They were in a different area called what? Who knows? Yathrib at the time, right? The Medina. Medina used to be called Yathrib. That's where they lived, their tribes, 3 main tribes. But they didn't interact with the Arabs. They were in their own quarters. And Medina is far from Mecca, right? Several day travel by camel or foot. So they're like, oh, let's go talk to their rabbis. Maybe they can give us a question or two that we can embarrass him with, and because he's not going to know. And they knew it. By the way, this is actually a sign that Rasulullah is a prophet of Allah. By the way, imagine living in a jungle with your own, like with a tribe, isolated completely, no means of going out. You don't have books or libraries, and somebody amongst them, they start to talk about the Roman history, Chinese history, inside out. And it's all true. You're like, what? Who are you? Look, who talked to you, right? Where did that come from? But the guy didn't travel anywhere. And there's no learned person there who knows any of that Chinese history. But somehow in the Amazon, that guy knows it inside out. And he grew up in front of you. Well, not normal. It's exactly what happened. The Rasul grew among them and he doesn't read or write. Doesn't read or write. Did not connect, did not travel to learn. He just grew among them and none of them know any of these histories, or let alone the stories of biblical prophets. And remember, the Arabs descended from who? Which prophet? Ismail. The Jews descended from who? Ishaq. Actually, that's the lineage also of Yusuf. Totally separate lineages. The Arabs had no knowledge of that lineage and their stories because they didn't descend from them. And they're already illiterate, mostly illiterate, and just living in their own little place in Mecca. That's it. So they went, traveled. They sent a delegation to the Jews in Yathrib, and they said, "Oh, of course," because they also didn't want a prophet from the Arabs, so they were keen on giving you tricks to discredit Rasulullah. They sat with him and said, "Hey, can you give us a question here? Please help us out here. There's this man claiming to be a prophet." Like the Jews are, "Oh, really, prophet from you guys? I'll give you questions right now, right?" So they said, "What's the question?" They said, "Ask him one question. He's not gonna know. No Arab is gonna know this. Ask him about the story of Prophet Yusuf and his family. Let him tell you the story, and we'll verify it." Who is gonna know, right? So they come back, and indeed invite Rasulullah and say, "Hey, Muhammad, tell us about Yusuf and his family." What did Rasulullah say? "Okay, give me some time. I don't know." Because he's what? A real messenger of Allah. He waits for what? Answers. What happens? Right away, Surah comes down. Let me give you the answer, Yusuf. You're going to give them things that even the Jews don't know, right? And Surah Yusuf came down. Stunned them. Because no normal Arab in Mecca would have known anything like that. Even the Jews of Yathrib wouldn't have known that level of detail. And it couldn't be more accurate. And one surah was dedicated for it. That's a quick summary of the causes of revelation. So inshallah, the intention is to, inshallah, each week, inshallah, take a passage from that surah. And inshallah, dig deep into it, linguistically, in the meanings that the scholars have kind of, provided, but also in terms of how we understand it ourselves. What lessons we can derive from these experiences. We're going to go through the whole story from the relationship that started with his father. And this story, one of the amazing things about it is that it starts, the narrative starts with what? Who knows? The actual story begins with what? Ibrahim, no, Sydney, go ahead. Starts with a dream. It's amazing symbolism in this. So we're going to talk a lot about dreams. What's the significance next time, inshallah? What's the significance of dreams? Why dreams? But there's something beautiful about dreams that it ultimately they're a reflection of life. Life is like a dream, right? And it's a mystery. And we just want, when you wake up from a dream, first of all, you recognize it was what? Well, how did you know? You woke up from it. That's what life is. It's a dream. You think it's really real. It's a real dream. It's not like fake, made up. No, it's real. But there is a moment in which you awaken from what? The dream. So we wanted the interpretation of everything. You notice we're always looking for people to interpret our dream. Bird whooping on me. It's interesting. I'll tell you stories about what they came to Prophet Muhammad with. It's like hilarious stories. Like somebody came to him who said, "I saw my own head cut off, and it was rolling down a hill like a ball, and I was running after my own head." If you want to know what he told him, come next time, inshallah. I'm not going to give you the answer. How do you interpret that, right? It's a hadith. So I'll tell you the answer next time, inshallah. So dreams, we want somebody to interpret, but your life as a whole, we want an interpretation, right? Individually, why is this happening? When will things happen? Also overall, isn't that what's tripping people up? They don't believe in a hereafter. They believe it's going to be a continuous dream. That's it. I'm living it all right here. It's going to end, and you're going to awaken from your dream and recognize it was a dream. So the story begins with a dream and ends with what? The of the dream. What? Fill in the blanks.
Reality.
The reality, or another word? What is it? Interpret. Yeah. The interpret. And it took decades for the dots to be connected and the dream to be explained. Such is our lives. Wallahi. Each element in that dreaming is an epic. Most amazing story. So detailed, every single thing that has happened in his journey until the interpretation of that amazing dream. So inshallah, with that, I'll end here. Come back. We'll cover, inshallah, a set of verses next time, beginning from the very beginning of the surah. And inshallah, the intention is to complete the surah, inshallah, whenever Allah permits us to inshallah, complete it. I'll pause here, inshallah. Open the floor for questions or comments. You can ask even about this. It's okay. Inshallah. Or anything else. Go ahead.
So, a question about dreams. I've heard like the scholars say that it's better to not.
To make us emulate the beautiful qualities of Prophet Yusuf, and to make us gain the insights and the wisdom that we need in our struggles, that we pass those trials that Allah decreed for all of us. Ask Allah to grant us knowledge, success in school, patience with our adversities, our hardships. We ask Allah to make our reactions to life pleasing to Him. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us people of faith, to increase our faith, to fill our hearts with contentment, trust in Him, and belief in the unseen. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to join us with Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma ameen, ameen, ameen. Sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Barakallahu feekum. Inshallah, until next Tuesday, bi'idhnillah. Assalamu alaikum.